The series begins at a swimming competition where the host announces the start of the women's 100-meter breaststroke final. One of the swimmers, Do-hee, stood out among the competitors. During the race, Do-hee competed against her fellow South Korean swimmer, Young-min, and ended up getting second place. She was upset that she didn't come in first and stormed off with an angry expression on her face, even though she was on camera. She told her coach to leave her alone and took a 6-month break in Seoul. Elsewhere, a young man in pink was strolling with a girl, both of them grinning shyly like it was their first time out together. The man's name was Kang Hogu, and the girl's name was Min Jae. However, when Min Jae got home, her boyfriend came to pick her up. Hogu went home feeling remorseful. For 3 months, he had been trying to win Min Jae over by taking her out to eat, watch movies, and drink, but it turns out that Min Jae didn't see it as a date. He talked to himself on the way home, realizing that his relationship with Min Jae wasn't mutual. Instead, it was built on a caring friendship. At first, Min Jae asked Hogu to help her fix her computer, and after he finished, she thanked him by buying him coffee. To show his appreciation, Hogu invites Min Jae to eat with him. In return, Min Jae asks him to go watch a movie with her. Hogu is unsure if his feelings for Min Jae are just flirty or if they are actually dating. He admits that he doesn't know because he has never done it before. He stops at an intersection and takes out his camera to capture all the couples in love. Suddenly, he sees Do-hee and tries to take her picture, but she pretends not to see him. He prints out the photo of Do-hee and meets up with his friends, Kim Tae-hee and Shin Chung-yi. They talk, and to their surprise, they find out that Do-hee was a childhood friend of Hogu and Tae-hee. The following day, Hogu helps out at his father's bookstore. He asks his father about the books that customers borrowed, and his father tells him that someone borrowed a book called Elias, except for the third book. He checks the computer and sees that it's true, Do-hee borrowed the book. In his room, Hogu still regrets not being able to meet Do-hee. However, he is excited because he will see her at the school reunion. He hopes that Do-hee will come to the event. Hogu changes his clothes multiple times while Chung-yi and Tae-hee give him their opinions. In the end, they decide that a dark gray t-shirt looks great on him. As they exited the store, they ran into Kang Ho-jeong, who suggested that Hogu change into neater clothes, such as a spotty shirt and tight jeans. Ho-jeong said that Hogu looked like the most handsome man in the whole world. This boosted Hogu's confidence. However, when he arrived at the reunion, he felt that Ho-jeong had played a prank on him. The waiters at the restaurant where the reunion was held were all wearing the same shirt as his clothes. He called Tae-hee and said he was leaving early without waiting for Tae-hee's approval. On his way home, there was chaos. Tae-hee asked everyone to sign a piece of paper without reading it, which was an insurance offer. People obviously did not want to sign it, causing Tae-hee to throw a tantrum because no one would sign it. Hogu solved the problem by signing it. On his way home, Hogu meets Do-hee and they go to the Han River banks. He tries to talk to Do-hee, and in the end, he succeeds in apologizing for not recognizing her when she came to the bookstore because he was busy catching thieves. The janitor finds a milk box left behind by Do-hee and Hogu on the banks of the Han River. He opens one of the milk cartons and finds a test pack showing 2 strips. They decide to go to the beach that night, but while on their way, they are both pickpocketed and they have no money to pay for the bus. They are forced to walk to the beach. When they arrive, they play in the sand. After taking 2 sips of soju, Do-hee loses control and screams while running around the beach. She even curses the pain she's experiencing in her stomach. Hogu tries to calm her down and keeps her from getting into the water. Do-hee sulks when she is brought back to the side, but after calming down a bit, she starts talking about things that Hogu doesn't understand, especially about never winning a gold medal before. She starts crying, and moments later, they kiss. Later that day, Do-hee goes to a clinic to check if she's pregnant. The doctor confirms that she is 13 weeks pregnant and that the baby is from her ex-boyfriend, Bayan Gang-chol. The doctor asks if she wants to abort the fetus, but Do-hee refuses and comments that the fetus looks small, like a candy bear. Hogu returns home, and life goes back to normal. A few months pass, and Hogu admits to sending many messages to Do-hee, but she never replies. He wants to contact her, but he remembers their promise to meet on December 25th and decides to wait. As Hogu sits in his home, he can't help but notice how the congratulatory banners from his past accomplishments have withered with age. He picks up the newspaper and comes across an article about Do-hee. Memories of her flood his mind, and he recalls her telling him about her hemorrhoid surgery, a type of cyst. With a newfound determination, he sets out to find her. Hogu heads to see Do-hee's coach, hoping to gather information about her whereabouts. However, the coach has no idea where she is, as Do-hee had taken time off to deal with personal issues. Despite feeling disheartened, Hogu refuses to give up. As he boards a train, Hogu's heart races with the possibility of reuniting with Do-hee. Suddenly, he sees her on the same train. As Hogu sits next to Do-hee on the train, he feels a mix of emotions, nervousness, excitement, and concern. He notices her stomach, which seems to be getting bigger by the day. He can't help but wonder if she's pregnant or if it's something else entirely. Despite wanting to talk to her, he remains silent, unable to find the right words. After they finish eating together, Do-hee leaves Hogu, leaving him feeling lost and confused. He confides in his friend Tae-hee, expressing his desire to forget about Do-hee because of her pregnancy. Tae-hee is outraged, angry at the way Do-hee has played with Hogu's feelings. Frustrated and hurt, they both drown their sorrows in alcohol, hoping to find solace in each other's company. Do-hee finds herself swimming alone in a pool, talking to her growing baby. The pool guard warns her to finish up quickly as they want to go home. She pleads for a bit more time to enjoy the serene atmosphere of the pool. She offers to mop the floors as a reward, and the guard agrees and leaves. As she relishes her solitude, she hears someone scolding her from behind. She quickly puts on her goggles and sees Hogu standing there. Hogu asks her about their relationship status, but Do-hee responds that they are just friends and will remain friends. Her words cut him like a sharp knife. He realizes that from the beginning, she never intended to date him. Do-hee tells him not to take it too seriously and not to think too much about it. Her words are like a band-aid over a deep wound, offering a temporary reprieve from his heartache. While in the midst of their conversation, Do-hee suddenly feels her water break. Panic sets in, and she is rushed to the hospital. Hogu orders the taxi driver to speed up, unable to bear seeing Do-hee in pain. The taxi driver nervously suggests Do-hee scream if the pain is too much. At the hospital, Do-hee is taken to the treatment room, while Hogu waits outside. He tells her he'll be leaving soon, but she insists her future husband will be coming. However, as he is leaving, a nurse informs him that Do-hee's husband is abroad and won't be coming. Hogu decides he must stay by Do-hee's side and gives her all the things he brought along. In the meantime, Gang-chul was having dinner with his family when he learned that he was going to have an arranged marriage. His mother told him that the girl he was going to marry was Ho-jeong. She also told him to start dating her if he wants to marry her next year. Gang-chul was reluctant at first and said that he was too busy with work to think about dating. However, his mother warned him that if he wants to get married next year, the wedding will cost an additional 100 million won. This made Gang-chul change his mind. Hogu sat anxiously beside Do-hee, who was writhing in pain and begged to undergo surgery to alleviate her suffering. Her body was trembling with pain, and her face was contorted with agony. The atmosphere in the hospital room was tense, with doctors and nurses scurrying about, trying to assess the situation. Despite Do-hee's pleas, Hogu tried to convince her to wait, explaining that it would be risky to undergo surgery at that moment. But Do-hee's agony continued to mount, and Hogu's anxiety grew with every passing moment. Do-hee had a special request to have her swimming goggles with her. She needed them to give birth to her child. Despite being exhausted and in pain, she was determined to make it happen. Finally, the baby was born, and it was a healthy boy. Do-hee cried tears of joy as she held him close. She asked Hogu to greet her son, and as he held the little boy's finger, Hogu was overcome with emotion and began to cry. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Gang-chul was getting ready for bed. He was about to put on his glasses when his phone rang. It was a message from Do-hee informing him that his child had been born. The news hit him hard, and he was left to grapple with the fact that he had a son with the woman he had left behind. Hogu visited the hospital the next day, bringing bread for Do-hee. He wanted to see her baby, but Do-hee refused, reminding him that he said he would only accompany her until the delivery was over. Hogu insisted on seeing the baby, and Do-hee started to cry when he asked her why she didn't want it. She confessed that the baby was a mistake, and she had considered aborting it but couldn't bring herself to do it. She worried that if anyone found out, her life would fall apart. Hogu was hurt by Do-hee's words and asked if his father was also a mistake. Do-hee said that the baby's father was also a mistake in her life. Hogu asks Tae-hee how she knows that Gang-chul is the father of Do-hee's child. Tae-hee replies that Do-hee came to the reunion not for no reason, but to find the person who dumped her and was avoiding her. Who else could it be but the baby's father? Meanwhile, Gang-chul is frowning when he receives a message congratulating him on the birth of a family member. He contacts Ngong-mai to find out who caller X is. He also reminds Ho-jeong about their date at the Itaewon Hotel. Eventually, they go on a blind date. After following Do-hee home from the hospital, Hogu is forced by her coach to reveal Do-hee's whereabouts. When they arrive at a small inn, Do-hee confesses the truth and begs the coach not to spread the secret. The coach is concerned that many journalists are now searching for her and it may all be uncovered. One day, a large group of reporters gathered outside Do-hee's house. She had to leave her baby with Hogu and his two friends in order to address the media. Do-hee explained that she had been on leave due to surgery for hemorrhoids and also had to talk to her bosses at work. While at her office building, Do-hee unexpectedly ran into Gang-chul and they had a brief conversation. She also met her rival, Young-min, who made fun of Do-hee for being pregnant. Meanwhile, Hogu and Tae-hee were struggling to take care of Do-hee's baby, and Hogu became annoyed because he knew the baby was Gang-chul's. He decided to take the initiative and brought the baby to Gang-chul's office, despite the security guard's attempt to stop him. Gang-chul is surprised to see Hogu at his office. He remembers the time they kissed in high school, but Hogu is unaware of this memory. Hogu came to tell Gang-chul about their baby that Do-hee had given birth to, but they end up having a fight. Later, Hogu comes back home with a bloody nose, but he doesn't tell Do-hee what happened between him and Gang Chol. Hogu tells Do-hee that he fell and that's why he has a bloody nose. Then, Do-hee gives her silver medal to Hogu, promising to get a gold medal in return. She plans to find adoptive parents for her son so she can focus on swimming again. Hogu keeps pushing Gang Chol to take responsibility for their child. One day, reporters discovered Do-hee's location, so her coach asked Hogu to look after her baby for a while. Hogu accepted the task and took care of the baby. During the night, Do-hee asked him why they couldn't just date, but he replied that it wasn't possible at the moment. He promised to love Do-hee with all his heart regardless. This made Do-hee cry, and then Gang Chol suddenly appeared with seaweed soup. The soup spilled when he saw them hugging, and he left without saying anything. Do-hee's crying made her son cry, and then they both settled down to put the baby back to sleep, looking like a happy family. The next day, as Hogu goes to work, he faces a new challenge. He has to bring the baby with him to the office. His two friends feel uncomfortable with the presence of a baby in the workplace. Meanwhile, Do-hee runs into Gang Chol, who asks about the nature of her relationship with Hogu and claims that Hogu had forced him to take responsibility for the baby. Later, Do-hee picks up her child, who she had entrusted to Hogu's care, and reveals that she and her baby are living secretly in Hogu's house because she has nowhere else to go. She urges Hogu not to contact Gang Chol again and reveals that he is not the father of the baby, but Hogu is still skeptical because Gang Chol is Do-hee's ex-boyfriend. One night, Hogu takes the baby out for a walk, trying to soothe his sadness. Meanwhile, Hogu's mother discovers that Do-hee is in Hogu's room. Despite the surprise, she is delighted, thinking that Do-hee is her son's girlfriend. Later, Do-hee's coach finds adoptive parents for the baby, which saddens Hogu deeply. He argues with Gang Chol, declaring his love for Do-hee, and this infuriates Gang Chol. Do-hee arrives with the baby and manages to separate the two angry men. But, when they step outside, a reporter appears out of nowhere, revealing that they had been following Do-hee for a few days as an undercover. One day, a reporter approaches Do-hee and asks about the baby she's carrying. She tries to deny that it's hers, but the reporter is not convinced. Hogu steps in and confirms that the baby is Gang Chol's. He takes the baby away to protect Do-hee from the reporters. Gang Chol is shocked to learn about the situation and that the reporter has been following Do-hee. Eventually, the baby is taken to Gang Chol's apartment. The coach is relieved to avoid the reporters, but Hogu feels sad to realize that the baby will be gone that night. Gang Chol is perplexed as to why the foster parents must come to his apartment, but the coach explains that it is the only option since Do-hee is still in hiding. Meanwhile, Ho-jeong sneaks into Hogu's room and rummages through his belongings. She discovers a box containing his cherished memories from that night in Yosu, as well as the baby's toys that were left behind. At the studio, Chung-yi tries to persuade Tae-hae to find out the father of Do-hee's baby, but Tae-hae insists that he doesn't know. If it turns out to be Hogu, he will be immediately fired. Suddenly, they receive a message from Ho-jeong that sheds light on why Do-hee is now dating Hogu. Do-hee, Gang Chol, and the coach spend their last moments together taking care of the baby. Later, the coach tells Do-hee that she needs to meet with the CEO and other board members, who plan to cancel her contract and replace her with her rival, Young-min. Meanwhile, the adoptive parents arrive to take the baby. The coach explains that the baby's mother attended a top college and accidentally became pregnant with her boyfriend, who is studying for a civil service exam. He hoped to make the baby more attractive by highlighting the intelligence of the biological parents while keeping Do-hee's identity as a mother a secret. After discovering that Jeom-dong was a boy, the adoptive parents began to hesitate as they were expecting a girl. Worried, Hogu quickly sent a message to Do-hee asking her to return soon. Although he had a feeling that something was wrong, the coach instructed him to buy teddy bears as a keepsake for the baby. Do-hee arrived too late as the adoptive parents had already taken Jeom-dong. Despite her sadness, she agreed with the coach that it was best for the baby to leave before she returned. As they were leaving, Hogu noticed something in the trash and quickly grabbed it before rushing out the door. He frantically searched the streets, determined to find Jeom-dong. In the apartment, the coach, Do-hee, and Gang Chol sit silently, lost in their own thoughts. Do-hee tells the coach that she starts practicing again tomorrow. Suddenly, Hogu screams, "They left the umbilical cord in the trash." He explains that he gave it to the adoptive parents to handle with care since it belonged to Jeom-dong, but they threw it away. Do-hee slowly turns around and sinks back into the sofa while Hogu falls to the floor and cries. Both of them are worried that Jeom-dong might have been sent off with bad people. Hogu orders the coach to help him find Jeom-dong and drags him out of the apartment. On the road, the coach admits that he doesn't really know the adoptive parents, he just met them on a website. He is horrified to find out that the website is essentially a place where unmarried mothers sell their babies to the highest bidder. In the pursuit of finding Jeom-dong, Hogu discovers a disturbing truth about the adoption agency. It's a platform for potential adoptive parents to bid for babies from unmarried mothers. He comes across posts of biological parents worrying about the fate of their children and the intentions of the adoptive parents. This angers Hogu, but Do-hee insists that it's her decision. After a tense search, they find the adoptive parents and retrieve Jeom-dong. They now live with Gang Chul. Later, Do-hee visits a grave and apologizes for not visiting more often. She cleans the grave and reveals it to be the resting place of Jeom-dong's father. Do-hee tells Hogu that Gang Chul is not the father of her baby, but Hogu is still holding on to his belief that he is. He remembers the conversation he overheard at the hospital, where he thought they were talking about Gang Chul not using a condom. Despite this, Hogu learns that Gang Chul is gay and once had feelings for him. Both of their parents know about Do-hee and the baby. Hogu's father is surprised, while Gang Chul's father is proud of his son. Eventually, Hogu decides to marry Do-hee, and they live happily taking care of Jeom-dong. Gang Chul also finds love with Ho-jung, and they all live happily ever after. The moral lesson of the story is never bring bread to a hospital, or you may end up taking care of a baby.